It just seems like you have this peace or calm or perspective
All of them.
that a lot of us don't have.
Well, I think we have it. We just choose to not. I think we all have it. And look, none of us are perfect, and I've had my moments, but it's a culmination of all those things that has helped me become who I am today. I've learned from a lot of things.
Welcome to the Know Your Ship podcast, presented by eHub. I'm your host, Frank Dolce. Is the one and only Big T, Thurl Bailey. When I was going to school at the U, that was your last couple years for your first stint with the Jazz, and it was fantastic. I mean, those were great. Those were great Jazz teams and great years to be involved with that. And so that's how I grew up a Lakers fan. I grew up in L.A.
You should have told me that before we had the podcast.
You would have come.
No, I would.
But I switched allegiances for guys like you. And
Thank you. Appreciate it. You haven't switched back yet, have you?
No. Okay. No.
Because, we're going through some difficult times right now.
I know. These are the times that try men's souls. What is this? This is iron is forged in the fire. Do you feel like that about this Jazz team, by the way?
I really do. I'm not just saying that because they employ me. I understand as a former athlete, I understand sometimes what you need to go through to be really good, right? To be collectively, in running for a championship. It's a lot of work. Takes a while, and it's not a perfect science. It's trial and error. So yeah, I mean, as a broadcaster now, and a guy who has a perspective from a former athlete's point of view, yeah, I get it, and I probably get it more than a lot of people do. Yeah. On the peripheral, you just have to kind of go through and trust that in this day and age, this new age of sports, new age of basketball, there's no perfect science to it, and there's a lot of great players out there, a lot of players who need to be developed at this level, but I get it.
I'm going to ask you one controversial question about basketball. Is the NBA being managed appropriately at the highest levels currently?
Is it being managed appropriately? Well, I would think that there's some similar structure and standards throughout the league, but obviously each individual team has their way of doing things. And I don't know from that question maybe what the premise is. Are we talking about the development of these young men? Are we talking about salaries? Are we talking about?
I think that's a great question.
Are we talking about the personalities of players who are coming in?
I don't know. Maybe we're talking about all of those things.
That starts well before the NBA. The NBA is about taking some of the best talent and bringing it to this level and putting out the best product and entertainment for the fans. The game is so global now. There is no more U.S. Dream Team, bro. Because the developmental processes of these foreign players has not really deviated from what we used to do back in the day. Start them young, you teach them fundamentals, and as the fundamentals are created, and the same thing in football, right? I mean, as the fundamentals are created, you make it your own. And so there's a big difference now. So I think the NBA is actually doing a great job of finding, because if you can play, I don't care where you are. If you're good, they're going to find you, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably the biggest difference in where we are at this level versus back when I started, because it was mostly U.S. guys. You go through high school. I remember when coaches used to come to high schools and recruit you.
None of that happened.
No. They may do it as a courtesy visit if you can play, just to come to your town. But AAU, which is an ugly beast.
I mean, we could probably do a whole podcast
on
that.
So I think in answer to your question, I think the machine that is the NBA, the machine that one David Stern probably gets the credit for starting as a global brand, and Adam Silver, I really believe is doing an amazing job trying to, one, put his stamp on it, but two, it's not without its issues, you know that.
Sure.
It's not without its issues, but I think as an association, I think the NBA is still growing. Look at the TV deals, look at the talent. So yeah, I think if you're gonna look for things that need to be fixed, I think a lot of those things need to be prior to the NBA
I
system.
think that's a great point. So you're optimistic.
Very, very, very optimistic.
Do you remember J.C. Carroll? J.C.
Oh,
Carroll
yeah.
was on the podcast.
Absolutely.
And, talking about developing talent overseas when he was playing over in Italy, a little 15-year-old kid named Luca started playing with them. And like you said, the game has just become global. And Luca had heroes from the United States and
Yes.
developed his talents. One thing that you mentioned I think is interesting, and I'd like to dig into that a little bit, is working on the fundamentals. And I feel so lucky to know you just a little bit and the kind of person that you are and this foundation of granite that you stand on and that you've built. And so I'm really curious about how you developed that over your life and how that has manifested itself today into this person who is so unique. I mean, you're a superstar, you're a legend, and walking around the street, people might not ever know that. You just don't act that way. You have this unbelievable foundation. I think I would love to talk about that.
I don't know whether it's granite or not. There's some soft spots in there, right? Because none of us have achieved that perfection. And in order to be where we are, and you're sitting down next to me, and what we're actually talking about is the journey, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody who sits in this chair, they're here to talk about a journey that they've been on and what has gotten them to this point. And so you don't get to any point without being at a lowest point. I think the best stories, the best journeys, the most authentic ones, the most truthful ones are about the difficult times that not just you had, but your parents had and their parents had before them. Mm-hmm. And what have you learned from those things? And what have you become because of them? Are you bitter? Are you thankful? I also believe that foundation should be built, I know mine is, on within spiritual roots, right? I grew up in a Baptist home. Mm-hmm. My parents made sure we went to church, at least Sunday school. They didn't go every Sunday for whatever reason, but they made sure their kids went off to Sunday school, gave them some pocket change so when the bowl was passed around. But every now and then they'd come, and I learned about this man named Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. And I was really intrigued. I remember at a young age just being intrigued and almost excited about learning more about him. So I think when you talk about my foundation, whatever happens after that, I know I have that. And so I know I can always pull from that, good or bad. So I think that's really where everything started for me, understanding from my teachers early on who were my parents. Mm-hmm. I was born in 1961. So.
And you were born where?
I was born in D.C. My parents they picked tobacco in Rocky Mount for rich white farmers, making almost nothing. Mm-hmm. But it's all they had to raise a family until that family started growing. My older brother and sister were born, and my mom was pregnant with me. And they just knew that they couldn't survive on what they were making in the hot summers, the hot summer heat, picking tobacco on tobacco farms. So they took a risk. My mom and dad got together and they said, we can't do this. So where can we go where there's more opportunity? And so my dad, having some connections in Washington, per his family, said, we got to move north. So they picked up everything. I think they left a lot of stuff behind and just found a way to get to D.C. And my mom found a job scrubbing floors for rich white people for 50 cents an hour and saved her money. My dad was a really good carpenter, and so he would find odd jobs. He was a great bricklayer. And so that was my foundation. I was born, my Uncle Thurl passed away right before they moved. He was a boxer, and he would go out in bad weather with holes in his shoes and go into these meat lockers like you saw in Rocky. And he got pneumonia and passed away. And right as they moved, after his passing, they named me after him. So, that was my beginning. And as I got older, I started to learn about what was going on around me. And my parents would come home and talk to us about the civil rights movement. And that was really when you talk about Washington, D.C., that's,
At that time.
yeah, it's kind of the mecca of
Right.
a lot of what was going on at that time.
So were your parents active in the civil rights movement? Were they participants? How would you gauge their activity?
They were participants. They were participants when it was convenient enough for them to be away from us and participate. They were at Martin Luther King's famous speech.
I know this. It gives me chills thinking about it because that speech is
Yeah.
iconic.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And so it was, when I talk about them being educators, they would come home and just gather us around. And after dinner, they would talk about what was going on and why it was going on and how we were affected by it.
Yeah.
So when Maryland actually complied to the desegregation law, because it took them a while, we had to know what was in store. And what was in store was the scenes from Remember the Titans, right? Like buses will pull up, white parents are out there with, their NIGGERS, go home signs, police all around. And so we had to figure out how to navigate through that because now we're not in the confines, the comforts of our own community. And so we're bused to white schools, and there were fights every day. There were parents getting arrested, black parents getting arrested. And so we had to navigate through that and eventually figure out how we as young people were going to survive in that world. So yeah, that was part of my upbringing. That was part of that foundation I was growing onto.
So what were the things that your parents would talk to you about? Like, what were the lessons that you generated from those discussions? Because it could have gone a couple different ways. I mean, it could have been like, we're gonna fight, and maybe that was the message, and we're gonna stand up, or we're going to comply, and we're going to be like, what were you learning during that period?
Well, I think regardless of what the lesson was, it was about the delivery of it. My parents never delivered an angry message, even though they probably were angry. And the reason I call them great educators is because of how they taught, right? I don't think I had any idea of some of the things they were going through until I learned later as I got older. My dad got arrested on occasion. My dad lost his temper on occasion. My dad got German Shepherds sicked on him on occasions. But we didn't know any of that, like early on. That wasn't something that was told to us through this process. The way they handled it was basically telling us how we needed to act, how we needed to treat people, how we needed to not start fights, but finish them. I mean, protect ourselves. If we believe in something, stand up for it. And so that was the delivery system from my parents. My mom did a lot of it because my dad was a lot of times out there trying to help us make ends meet. But my mom didn't play, man. My mom was a tough Southern woman. And, that era, man, you got your butt whooped, right? It really took a village because my neighbors had permission to whoop my butt, right, if I acted up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We had the same thing. And I'm really curious about your mom and this. She must have had this unbelievable perspective about your path and probably your siblings' paths and how to provide the best opportunity for her family that maybe she didn't enjoy when she was growing up. So that seems like where did that come from? Where did she acquire that perspective? And I know that I'm guessing that your parents didn't have an opportunity to have formal education, at least not for a long time. But education was supremely important to your mother.
Yeah, it was. They made it through high school.
Same with my grandparents.
Yeah.
Made it through high school.
Yeah, they both went to Nash County High School in North Carolina, Nash County, North Carolina. But I think the real education came from just the process of living and surviving. But my mom was, I think the best way to describe her was that she was a force. She really was a force. She had to be all things to us. Because my dad got hurt when we moved to D.C. He was on a construction job helping tear down a building, and they would allow him to take some of the bricks home, and the brick wall fell on him. He was in a coma for quite a while. And my mom at that time was trying to save up enough money to be a nurse. Mm-hmm. So at the same time she was taking care of us as kids, she was trying to take care of my dad, who had come out of the coma, but he had to learn how to write all over again. So she would help him with that kind of therapy. And so she was a strong woman, and it was a difficult thing for our family, but she, being the kind of woman she was, she didn't ask for a lot of help. And then when my dad got better, he was deemed to be disabled. So he was on disability. Although he had everything working again, he would find odd jobs to continue to help his family grow and survive and thrive. Mm-hmm. So my mom would lay down the law about our education. And the law was, you're not allowed to bring home C's or below in this house. And, you know, as a young kid, like, you're making a C, it's like, that's passing. That's mm-hmm. like,
I'm moving on.
Boy, don't say that out loud to mama. She made it clear that C is average. Mm-hmm. C is average. And look, I don't raise average kids in this house. And the only way that you kids are going to be successful, in my eyes, is you're going to have a great education. You're going to get the best education. You're going to take advantage of it. You're not going to sit in the back of the class. You're going to raise your hand. You're going to ask questions. And you're not bringing home any C's. And her thing was, I bet not see a C on your report card or below. And so the law was pretty much laid down. And of course, my dad endorsed it, but my mom was she was boss.
Yeah.
And so that's the criteria you start from. Because you know if you go below that, there's problems.
So did that just set your expectation? Did you fight against that at all?
No.
Or were you just aligned?
You don't fight against mom and what she says. You kidding me? In that era? Strong black woman who's out fighting for you? No.
Yes.
So yeah, and part of that too is how you receive it, right? Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I had a brother that fought it. Mm-hmm. But I never fought it.
You had an older brother?
Yeah. He was 2 years older, and you know, he was kind of the rebellious one. Mm-hmm. And so I think in my eyes, that was the standard, and I was going to be better than that standard.
Yeah.
And show that after everything I've learned from my parents, and now I'm in this new environment, I want to stand out. I don't want to be average. And so that was really the standard I set for myself going forward, not just with that.
Your mom set the expectation and you jumped in line with the standard. Did you learn anything from your rebellious older brother during that time?
Yeah.
I mean, I look back, I had a rebellious sibling, and my whole thing was I didn't want any of the controversy that went along with being the rebellious sibling. And
I think, there were some things I learned from my brother, my rebellious brother. Mm-hmm. But I think ultimately I learned that you're not going to win this, bro. You're not going to win this phase of it in this house.
Not that way. There's another way to win.
That's why he was kicked out early. 16 years old, 17 years old. Now you're on your own. So you can come back if you decide to play by the rules, but you want to defy things. And so, and he really is the one that struggled. But for me, it's like any muscle, right? You practice it enough, it becomes maybe a little sore at first, maybe a lot sore, but if you push forward, you're stronger than before, and you've got these new ideas, you've got these new things, you've got these fundamentals you're working from, these standards you're working from.
Yes. Well, and the standards were set high. That's a great place to start. High standards and parents who were aligned with making sure that you achieved, and you developed that. So that's the start, of this foundation that we talk about, is your parents and your family and your upbringing. Tell us about the first time you sat down watching a basketball game with your dad and what you witnessed?
Well,
because you're not, at this point, you're not, I mean, you're probably athletic, you just don't know it. You're not into athletics. You're not playing basketball and stuff. You're going to school and you haven't tried out for a team at this point, but you have this opportunity to watch
first
it.
of all, you know if you're athletic. There's no not knowing.
That's the only cocky thing I've ever heard you say.
That might have been your case, but you know whether
when
you can walk and chew gum.
Yes.
And I could not.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah. You kidding me? Look, I heard my mom. I knew I was going to be different than other kids in my own family and kids I came across in my sphere. I used to hear my mom talk about my birth. Child, you know what? When I had that boy, they had to open the doors behind the doctor because he just kept coming out. He just kept pulling him. So I was a long baby, Frank. I mean, I was. And so, you know, when you hear that stuff, you're like, oh, that's interesting. I know she's kind of joking, but it's true. I was different. I was, heck, at 12 years old, I was like 6'4". So that's different.
That's different.
And when you're focused on your top priority being your education, I decided what my outlet was going to be because it couldn't be all work and no outlet, all focused on grades. So I chose music. I chose the fantastic instruments of the tuba and the trombone. Yeah, I can see you holding back your laughter because those were cool instruments back then.
Wait, when were they cool?
They were never cool.
Those were, like, if you would have said, I chose the saxophone, then we're like, the saxophone.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that.
No, it's tuba and trombone. That's what the band needed. Okay. And I said, that's different.
Yep.
I want to try the trombone first because, it's available. Nobody's doing it. And then tuba came after that.
Was your family musical at all?
They loved music. I used to. My alarm was music. Now I didn't have an alarm clock. I would wake up in the morning, pretty much every morning, to the sounds of Nat King Cole, Sam Cooke, Frank Sinatra, and I would walk into my. I knew what I was going to see, but my parents were dancing in the living room. It was like a routine of theirs. Put music on in the morning, and. I don't know where my dad found this old Victrola, but he had some vinyl, and that's where my real love of music came because I associated music with love. Yeah. My parents dancing. Now, they didn't get along all the time. That was knockdown drag-outs between my parents, but they never failed to have that music playing in the morning. And I went off to school with this attitude of like, it was good. I wasn't grumpy when I left the house. I was ready for the day. And then when I got old enough to kind of understand what I wanted for Christmas, I wanted a little record player. And kids don't understand what a 45 record is, but I had two of them. I started out with one because that's all, I got one for Christmas. And, one song on each side, Frank. Put the needle on it and you play it. If you didn't find that little red thing that went in between, you were in trouble. Yeah. So, but it was ABC that was the Jackson 5. Played it all the time. And then
was that the A side? What was the B side? Do you remember?
I cannot remember what the B side was. I wish I knew.
Yeah, that's good.
But I eventually got a second one because there was a battle of the bands back then. You either wanted to be Michael Jackson or Donny Osmond. So, One Bad Apple, the Osmond Brothers, was my other one. I would play one and play the other, learn the lyrics and pretend I was Michael Jackson, pretend I was Donny Osmond. So that was where my love of music started. And I wasn't an athlete, wasn't playing sports until one particular evening when my dad was watching a basketball game on a Zenith TV set. I think everybody had one of those with the knob broken off. You had to eventually turn it with pliers. And so I sat down and just because I loved hanging out with my pops, didn't know what was going on. He was telling me about these two teams, and I loved their shorts because they were short. They were authentic shorts, And then my eyes just gravitated towards one guy with a huge afro and asked my dad who he was, and he told me he was one of the greatest athletes in the world. And literally I said, he asked me, I asked him who it was. He said, Dr. J. And I asked him, I didn't know doctors. I said, Dad, doctors can play this sport, because that's how much I knew about the game. And he said, no, son, if you're great in sports, they give you a nickname. That's his name. His real name's Julius Irving. That's when I learned about Dr. J. And that moment sitting next to my dad would change my trajectory. Watching that man do what he did, it was like poetry in motion. I didn't know all the rules, but I knew.
You were inspired by that.
Oh my gosh. I was like, I didn't know humans could do that.
Mm-hmm.
And you know about inspiration, right? I mean, I call it the call. Something calls you into something, right? And that was it for me. It didn't go away, because, sometimes those feelings can be flash in the pan.
Mm-hmm.
Life takes over, your homework, all these things take over, and you kind of forget about it. But man, that feeling, I wanted to be Dr. J, bro. I wanted to be him. I didn't want to be like him.
Mm-hmm.
I was determined to be that man.
How did your mom feel about that? Did she know about your desire?
Neither one of them knew I wanted to be Dr. J, but eventually they knew I wanted to learn how to play basketball. Mm-hmm. I kept the Dr. J thing
that was your
inside.
Yeah.
That was my own thing.
That was your own goal.
It was. And so the other thing my parents will always say was, ask the right questions to the right people. Mm. If you want to know something, there's something that you don't know, mm-hmm. find the right person. Now, you may not like the answer, but don't stop until you know that you've asked that question to the right person who can answer it for you. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, how am I going to learn how to play hoops? Mm-hmm. There's a park down the street, Cedar Heights, but there's never any basketball down there. There's always people down there gathered around doing something. Don't know what they're doing. Found out what they were doing, but we were forbidden to go down there, mm-hmm. get on the drug trade, the drug deals. But I asked my dad. That was the right person for me. Mm-hmm. He knew basketball. I said, Dad, can you teach me how to play? He about jumped out of his shoes. But he was excited. He never came to me and said, don't you want to play sports? Don't you want to do this? Well, my parents allowed us to make those kind of choices. My music choice, my parents were thrilled. Mm-hmm. My wanting to play basketball, my dad was thrilled. And he woke me up early one morning on a weekend, told me to come out and help him do some work. Didn't tell me what it was about. He said, I want you to help me pull these weeds up. So we started pulling a bunch of weeds up in an area near the house, and he had found some sand somewhere. I think he used it when he was mixing his mortar. I don't know what it was, but he found some sand and laid some sand down, and we raked it and leveled it out and patted it down. And he had a garbage can, because he had all the tools. He took a saw and he cut it across, I don't know, about 3 or 4 inches deep, and nailed it. He had one of those long nails, and he nailed it to the side of the house. I had my first basketball.
Was it standard height? Was it 10 feet?
It was. It was 10 feet. He measured it.
Yeah.
And he found some old basketball. We didn't have a needle, so it didn't have a lot of air in it. Mm-hmm. It was used. Mm-hmm. And that was the beginning of my basketball lessons.
Can you remember the first time you touched the basketball, the first time you took a shot in that backyard with your trash can hoop? And
yeah.
What were you thinking about?
Dr. J.
Did you immediately try and go up and do a windmill dunk?
No. No, my dad wouldn't allow that, and I couldn't dunk then anyway. So the first time he brought me out to teach me something, the ball wasn't even part of the deal.
This is sounding like Hoosiers. Like,
yeah,
you're going to work on the fundamentals.
Well, he brought me out and he made me stand in a basketball defensive position with my arms out. And he made me stand in that position for probably a minute and a half, just doing nothing but standing there. And I stood up after the lactic acid kicked in and my legs were shaking a little bit. I stood up and he said, son, that right there is preparation. He said, I'm going to teach you how to shoot and do a bunch of things. But that position right there is the most important position you can ever be. I want you to know it's the most important position you can ever be in this game. And he started to explain it to me. And sometimes he'd go on his little side tangents about what preparation really meant in life.
Yeah, he's taken an opportunity.
Yeah. And he did, I'm not even sure I even grasped it then, that part. But I understood when he started talking about, if you're guarding the other team's best player and you're not in that position and they're any good, they're going to get right by you. They're going to read you that you're not prepared. If you're trying to rebound, if you're trying to take a shot and you're standing straight up waiting for the ball. So he associated that with just being prepared all the time in my mind for anything that could happen in basketball. And so preparation was first and foremost. And then when he did bring the ball out, I remember him talking about my hand position on the ball, my guide hand, my shooting hand, my follow-through. We went off on tangents about that, follow-through, how important follow-through was in your life. And maybe I caught a little bit of it, but I'm anxious to get on to what Dr. J was doing, right? Right. And then I remember one time he'd come out and take his foot and draw a line in the sand and say, son, I'm going to teach you how to shoot free throws. And he talked about follow through. He even talked about some visualization. He said, one day you never know. One of these days you might be shooting a game-winning free throw. And first he started talking about how nothing comes for free, so you've earned the right to be on the line. And so my dad was just an amazing teacher. But yeah, I remember my first shot being very close to the rim. Right, very close to the basket, a layup. Taught me how to make a layup, how to go off one foot. And on the wooden backboard, he had painted a square back there and talked about the target and everything. So yeah, it was a process that for me as a person learning, it wasn't going fast enough. Because my image was Dr. J.
Yeah.
But I understood, based on what I read about Dr. J, what the clippings my dad would save, he knew Dr. J was my favorite, things I would read about him, is this is the process that every athlete went through. And I have to go through this process just to learn, just to absorb all this information.
I mean, we'll get to this at some point, but I bet you use that. You do some motivational speaking on leadership, and I bet you use that. I mean, I bet you can just rely on all of those lessons. I mean, everybody sees Tiger Woods go out and hit the golf ball, and they want to go out and do that.
Yeah.
How many of us, well, like me, go out there and try to do that without taking the steps required to get to that point?
A lot of athletes do nowadays. But yeah, I mean, it was our technology. That was the fundamentals. That was the process. That's all we had. Right? And if we were dedicated enough to stick to it and learn those fundamentals and get used to them, what do they say? It takes 10,000 reps for something to be a habit. I don't know if that's true, but probably. Yeah. At least
it feels like that.
Yeah.
So I just love these stories about the foundation that your mom set and the standard that she set. And then you aligned with that. And then your dad said, look, you're not going to shoot baskets today. We're going to work our way up to that point. At what point did you decide now, okay, I have enough. I'm going to go play organized basketball? It's still your passion. It's still something you want to do. And I'm guessing that you haven't brought home a C yet, or you wouldn't be able to.
Never. No, I was straight A student, straight A's.
That's amazing.
So, establishing that not wanting to be average thing, it wasn't just about the academic part. It was kind of my whole being a young black kid in an integrated environment, knowing that a lot of these white kids came in with their perception of being better than me or better than any other black kid, because that's probably what they learned at home, whether by their parents or just naturally through being educated from other places. But yeah, I think for me, because you don't get better unless you put the time in. There's no way around it. You can't circumvent the work. And so my dad wasn't always there. I had my hoop. I had daylight, because when the sun went down, I couldn't see the hoop. And so I would be out there on my own working on the things that my dad had instilled and taught me. But when the time came for me to kind of progress, went to junior high school, my 7th grade year, I saw the poster on the gym door, basketball tryouts, Bladensburg Junior High School. And I had learned some things. My dad was just a really great fundamental teacher, and we just kind of hit on these things every single time. I feel like I always had a plan when I went to work out. I didn't just go out and just mess around. I did take some days to have some fun.
Sure.
5 seconds on the clock. I've got the ball. My team's down by a point.
Right.
And you know who I am. Mm-hmm. Dr. J.
Dr. J.
So I had those days, but I had a plan. I knew I was going to work on this day, my layups, my free throws, my follow through, my rebounding, throw it against the board and grab it with 2 hands and come down. And so I had that regiment going, but now I think seeing other opportunities and organize. I'd never played organized basketball before. Now I could put these things to the test. And so my parents were excited. I wanted to try out for the Bladensburg Junior High School basketball team.
Mm-hmm.
So I showed up. I remember my mom buying me some red short shorts and I had a white tank top. Remember walking in the tryouts, my first ever at Bladensburg Junior High School. Walked into the gym and there's about 50 guys trying out for the team. And I walked in there and I was nervous, obviously, because I'd never played the sport before in an organized situation. But I looked around and I'm like, I got this, man. Frank, I was 6'4".
In 7th grade.
In 7th grade, and the next tallest guy, maybe a little above my waist. Oh. So, my academic mind was saying, okay, the rim's 10 feet from the floor. Mm-hmm. I'm closer to this rim than anybody trying out for this team. So if you were in my shoes, my size 15 shoes, I'm a pretty good shoe-in. So I went in and coach lines us up and says he wants to put us in these groups. So he wants to see where our skills are right away. So we go through some ball handling stuff and I get the ball. And the one thing my dad hadn't really gotten to was how you hit that thing and it came back and hit your hand and you just kept hitting it. And you had to move. And maybe because we didn't have a lot of air in the ball, but
you just didn't learn to dribble.
I couldn't do it.
It's an important part of the game.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and so I'm sure that lesson was coming at some point. But when that thing...
It was in there. So it was coming up.
It was.
When
that ball hit the tip of my size 15 shoe and shot down the other end of the court, it's like, okay, yeah, the little guy before me was like, made it look easy.
Yeah.
And we went through some things that I had just never, ever seen. And so I thought I did okay. Came back the next day because, you find out whether you made the team or not. You go to the coach's office and on his door, there's a piece of paper with a list of names on it. I got cut. I'm 6'4", 6'5", 7th grade, got cut from the team. Devastated. Mm-hmm. Cried my eyes out. Tried to pretend like there was something in my eye because, there were some little dudes there giving each other their high fives, my low five. But man, I was so devastated, man. It was the most painful thing I think I had felt. Even when I got my butt whooped, it wasn't as painful as when I looked at that piece of paper and didn't see my name on it. Yeah. Because I loved it that much. I wanted it that badly. Mm-hmm. And my standard was Dr. J. That was my goal, and this is how I'm going to get to it. Mm-hmm. Dr. J played organized basketball, so there's success. There's some evidence that if you go through these steps, that you can get closer to your goal. Mm-hmm. So I was devastated because I had to talk about failure now. Go home and tell my parents, cry in front of them.
Yeah,
they didn't want to hear all that crying stuff.
They didn't. I was just going to ask you, how did your parents manage that?
Stop it. What you crying about, son? Go to work.
Yes. It seems like it's a great lesson. It seems so simple.
Not at the time, it wasn't great. What you
didn't appreciate?
You don't want to feel. You don't want to have empathy of how I'm feeling.
You didn't appreciate that
Boy,
lesson.
You better shut up. Get your butt out. Get your homework done and get out there and go to work.
This is a movie. I don't know. We need to have someone needs to write this movie.
It's not a unique story. You know that, but you need unique people in your life to get you to understand why they're not feeling sorry for you.
Yeah. And
why you shouldn't be feeling sorry for yourself. Because right now, there's someone out there wanting the same thing you want. Mm-hmm. And you're sitting here in front of me crying. I got to give you something to cry about if you don't get your butt out there and go to work.
Get to work.
So I got it. I understood. I was out there in that yard. I was asking my dad when he could to come out, even my older brother. Come beat me up a little bit. Mm-hmm. 8th grade came. I'm 6'7".
Oh my gosh!
And
you just keep growing.
One thing my parents talked to me about through all that was opportunity. It's coming. You know, what are you going to do when it comes? Are you going to be ready? Do you love it enough? Do you want it bad enough to give it another shot? And I did. I showed up, same coach, tryouts. I was a little bit better. I had actually grown a few inches and felt pretty good about it. Came back the next day and cut again. 6'7", 8th grade, cut again. And most people would have that reaction that I'm looking at you right now. You're frowning. You're like, what the? The bottom line is I wasn't very good. The bottom line is there were a lot better players in there than I was. The bottom line is that coach, I would find out the next day because I was devastated again. Because, that second time, if you've ever failed in anything, that second time is a little bit different than the first failure. First one was like, took your heart, right? It's devastating, and it's like, well, man. But if you're true to what you know, if you know that you've developed a passion for this, and there's going to be another opportunity down the road, and if you put the work in and you prepare for that date, that's achievement right there. So I did that. I got cut that second year, and I'm standing there looking at that list with my name not on it. And now I'm thinking, well, what do I do now? Got cut twice, still painful. I know what I learned from the first time. What do I need, right? What do I need to keep me motivated? Because this is 2 times, right? And most people, there's a lot who don't even get past the first one. Maybe because their passion wasn't what they thought it was, or maybe it was a little harder than they thought, and they wanted to take an easier path to something. That wasn't my fabric, not in my house, right? So did I still love it? Did I still want it? Was Dr. J still that? Yeah, of course. I still wanted it. It was there. And so along with everything else that I needed to take care of, that was still a priority to me. But as I walked away that year from that cut sheet, the coach came out of his office. Herb Gray, that's his real name, came out of his office, Coach Gray, called my name. He told me to come here. He walked in front of me and crossed his arms, and he looked up at me, and he said, son, look, I just don't think you're meant to play the sport. And he said, I know you're doing other things. I know you're into music. Maybe that's your calling, which was nice of him. He said, but I don't have time to teach you how to play basketball. I'm looking for guys who can help me win a championship this year. So I need guys who already know how to play. And I got it. I understood. I understood that this coach had a certain way of putting a team together, right? He wanted success right now. And that wasn't me. Look, I barely learned how to dribble. I barely just learned how to dribble. And so I got it. It didn't help me. I was still disappointed that this coach is telling me. And he said, you've got one more year at the school. Don't come out for the team next year because you'll be wasting my time and yours. He was a straight shooter. He didn't mince words. And so I had information now from a guy who knew more about the sport than me, probably knew me better than I knew myself. And I walked away that day trying to figure out what path I was going to take. So I decided that the closest I was going to ever get to Dr. J was ball in my hands, 5 seconds left on the clock. My team's down by a point.
In your backyard.
In my backyard. But I was still out there. I was still out there working on it. All those other things that were involved in building this person, preparation, follow through, opportunity, and they were still there. So maybe I'm not going to waste time. And I was 6'9", my 9th grade year of junior high school. And Coach Gray wasn't there. He got higher pay at another school. So they hired another coach. I didn't know him. He didn't know me. I never met him. So do I go back in there? Do I go back to the place, or the painful place that I felt defeat for 2 years? I mean, why would anybody go back to a place where they knew was painful? And again, we talked about my standards, right? My parents, so I thought about it. I mean, you got to at least think about it. Do I really want to go back in there? What would take me back? And all those things I've already talked about. Those visions of Dr. J. I already knew how failure felt. I already knew how it felt to get cut. Yeah, it was painful. But I think the bottom line was, I'm not going to cut myself. Dude, I'd rather go back and feel that, whatever that's going to be. If I'm going to get cut from this team, I'm going to let them do it. And so Coach Cole, who's the new coach, is different too, because he stood outside the gym door as everybody walked in, shook their hands, every single player, 50, 60 of us. Come on in, guys. Welcome. Looked at his watch, shut the door, locked it, brought us all together, and just told us right off the bat, congratulations. Looking at each other like, what's he congratulating us for? Congratulations for showing up. There's probably some guys that want to be in here, but too late. Door's locked. We got to get on with business. I think we can put together a pretty good team. Can't keep all of you, but good luck to all of you. I noticed it. Even as a kid, I noticed that it was different from before. And throughout the whole tryout process was different. Some things were similar, but what was different was this coach, I noticed him and his staff going around almost to every kid and coaching them up a little bit, talking about certain things, how we did them, came up to me and complimented me in a little scrimmage we had and said, that's a nice job, Thurl. I think you could be a pretty good shot blocker. Made me feel good. I mean, I'd always be a shorter guy shooting. I just put my hand up and hit my hand. It's a blocked shot. But I think what I noticed differently was he made everybody feel like they had a shot, right? Knowing that people were going to get cut. He made us feel good about being there and not putting a few players above others. So I felt like I had a shot. But I knew, looking at the group, if I wasn't the worst player there, I was probably second. And came back the next day and looked at that piece of paper on the gym door and didn't have to look far because that was my name. Matter of fact, it was in the top of the list, Frank, number 1 on the list, because I knew he thought of me first. Then I realized it was alphabetical order. However, I was on the list.
Yeah, you were.
I made the team, and the most exciting day of my young life.
Was that your? I'll bet that was exciting. Was that your best tryout of the 3? I mean, you just said that maybe you were the second worst on.
It was, but it was my best tryout.
But it was your best tryout. Okay, I want to ask you a couple questions about this. Was there any value in the way that Coach Gray managed that situation?
Any value to me?
Yeah. Were you motivated? Did you think that you would never try out again if a different coach didn't step in his place? I mean, was there any value in the way that he managed that situation?
I don't think I realized the value till later. Wasn't any value to me then because he cut my ass. Twice. And so,
well, he's got that. Like he could say, "Well, I cut Thurl Bailey twice."
Oh, that's all he said after a certain point. But yeah, I didn't. There was no value to me until later, and I realized what a great value it was to me. He didn't have obligations to me. He cut a lot of guys, and this is the part where I learned. I made the team, but making the team wasn't the life-changing moment. It changed me. It got me to understand some things about what my parents were preaching, perseverance and the preparation and all that stuff. But what changed me was about a week after that. Changed my life totally. That coach called me into his office, Coach Cole. I had made the team. We'd had some practices. And he sat me down, just me and him in his office. And he looked at me. I couldn't, eye contact wasn't, I was learning. I'm in the office with my coach. And he said, look at me, son. I want you to look at me when I tell you this. So I looked up at him, and he said, if you want to be a really good basketball player, you've got a lot of work to do. A lot. Kept saying that a lot. He said, but if you're willing to commit to it, I'll come in 1 hour before we practice as a team and work with you. If you're willing to get here, be on time, be early. And we'll practice as a team for a couple of hours. And I will stay 1 hour after to work with you. Who does that? You've only known me, a couple of weeks. And so I'm sitting there like trying to calculate this time he's willing to spend with me and wondering why he would do that. Now, I don't know who else he's telling this to, but I'm the only one in his office right now. And he said, son, I see potential in you. He said, I see potential in you don't even see in yourself. And look, we might not win a championship this year. I know it's your last year of junior high school. We may not be good enough. He said, but I see something in you that I need, that I can use. And that statement from him, I have never forgotten. I've always used. It's part of the fabric of who I am. It's part of the lens I see everybody with. It's, I train kids myself in basketball, but I come across kids in all walks. I come across all different kinds of people. Some really good people, some maybe even not so good. Some who have wronged me. They didn't think this would be this tough. But that's who I am. Good or bad, wrong or right, to a fault or not, that's who I am. And that's what I've learned. Not every kid's going to play in the NBA, but I would say most have dreams of being there. I'm going to be real with a kid in that aspect. He's not going to, he's got to put the work in. Whatever it is he wants to do, he's got to put the work in. But that moment in that coach's office, it really changed me in the fact that, look, I know I'm not very good, but here's a man who is willing to maybe cut a better player for this particular year and keep me for something that he sees that he may not even be a part of later. Mm-hmm. And so that was look, I didn't even play a lot in junior high school. He kept me on the team, started me every game because he wanted the first possession.
You were in the tip.
I got the jump ball. We got the first possession. We'd get it. He called a timeout. And I wouldn't play the rest of the game. Oh. That was my junior high school career. But I tell people, hey, you laugh. Driving home, my parents were there at every game. I'm in the back seat, driving home, 25 minutes to get home. My mom would always turn, say, baby, that was a beautiful jump ball you got there today.
You were undefeated in the jump ball.
Can't wait till next week.
Oh.
So.
That's so good.
That was an important part of my development. Just that somebody saw something in me. And then from there, you get handed off to the next person. Mm-hmm. You find the person who can answer your next question. If you're passionate enough, you stick with it. I wasn't good enough to play varsity my first year of high school. Played JV. Found a guy named Ernie Welch, who was my JV coach. Just another great leader. He was also my history teacher. It's those people, right? It's those people that are in your lives that see something. You try to take advantage of that and develop.
So about Coach Cole, it seems like there's a couple things. One is he said, if you're willing to put in the work. That must have been that's what you do. Like that must have been just a blessing to you. That's what your mom taught you. That's what your dad taught you, that you're going to have to put in the work. So when he said that, you were probably, well, that's easy. That's the easy part.
It wasn't easy.
It wasn't easy.
No, because I had to give up some things.
Like what?
Like hanging out.
Did you get to do that?
Yeah. I have my group of friends. Like.
Okay, so there was sacrifice.
Yeah.
That went into that.
I had to be coachable in all aspects.
That makes it even better.
Yeah, I mean, come on. When have you known great success to come without sacrificing something, right? I mean, there were things that I had to look. When you're the kind of person that I tried to be in that time, you attract all kinds of people. Mm-hmm. Because they know how you are. They know you're accepting of them regardless of who they are. So you got bad kids mm-hmm. that like you. You've got good kids that like you. You've got white kids that like you, black kids that like you. I mean, and maybe like you is not the right way to put it, that want to be around. There's a gravitation there mm-hmm. that you're not going to treat someone who's struggling with something, worse than, your neighbor kid that you grew up with, right? Because you see something in them, mm-hmm. right? Not that you try to change them, but there's something about you that attracts them to you, whether it's your sports or whatever. So I had to make choices. Mm-hmm. My bad friends were doing not so good things, mm-hmm. and I had choices to whether to go hang out with them or do this with them or get in trouble. And there were little things sometimes that I did and I got in trouble for, but nothing to the gravity of, I was going to put my life in jeopardy and things like that. I was smart enough not to and afraid enough not to go that way.
Yeah.
But you had to you got to sacrifice some things because there's only so much time in a day.
Sure.
And if my goals are set, if I know what I want to achieve, then I'm going to try to stay on that path.
When Coach said to you, or you had the feeling that he recognized the potential in you, is that something that you had recognized about yourself? Is that your ability to see the potential in others, or was that an inflection point and you incorporated that into your life? Someone saw potential in you, your mother saw potential in your father, and now Coach Cole, and now you've decided that's how you're going to manage the rest of your life. I'm going to see the potential in others. I have a follow-up question about that. So, but let's talk about that first.
Yeah. Well, I think as you are kind of constructing yourself as a person, You get all this information from all these people, all these experiences that help all your choices, good or bad, right or wrong, that help shape you. All your excuses sometimes that you want to use or you don't use, all your risks that you take in being cut or rejected. Some of that just becomes who you are and it's automatic and you don't think about it. And then you rise to this level of, okay, I want that. I'm going to go for that. Oh, there's never been a black student government president. I'm going to go for that. I can be the captain of all these clubs I'm signing up for. Oh, absolutely. That's me. I'm not afraid of that. Not afraid of losing the election either. I think what happens is you figure out who you are and other people figure out what you have and who you are. And you have this platform that you're starting to develop. And it's a powerful one. You're not just 6'9", 6'10" in high school. You're a good person. You're making good choices. You're getting respect from everywhere, good, bad. You're becoming a pretty decent athlete, which is a universal thing, sports, right? And so all these things are coming a part of that platform. And now you're establishing yourself as a leader, right? I didn't necessarily start out saying, oh, I want to be a leader in this, but the things that you're doing, the decisions you're making, the failures that you're going through, and the ability to overcome those. I think the bottom line is everybody wants some of that in whatever they're doing. They want to learn how to become some of those things. And a lot of people don't use it for good, but it's still the same process in a way, right? So I think, and the self-discovery was a part of who I was, and I just began to be this different kind. Some people are just athletes, and they learn how to, to be really great at that. But there's all these things that kind of permeate from who I was becoming.
Yeah.
And people take notice.
Yeah.
When you're a good student, when you're, maybe you do something that's not detrimental, but you get a pass because they know you've got goodness in you, and you better not do it again. So, I think knowing that I wasn't a perfect person, but knowing that some of these things that were starting to come out, like the leadership qualities and the basketball, being good at basketball started to come out. And so, I think that was kind of the baseline of the base of this platform I was creating and still have today.
Yeah. I'm assuming that there was this level of confidence that was building
Can't do it
up.
without it. You cannot do it without confidence.
Was that helpful in how you navigated what you described earlier as a little bit of animosity between some kids who may have been taught that they were better than you, and where you were coming from, and how did you marry that? I mean, you just mentioned you decided you want to be the president of the student body, and you joined all these clubs, and then you were not only joining the clubs, but you were the president of all the clubs.
I was.
Was that your mechanism to overcome some of those issues you were facing?
Maybe not consciously. I knew based on my life and my background that there were some things that I needed to fight for, and I needed to do my part as far as changing the attitudes and the thoughts of people who maybe thought that I should be lesser than them. But look, that wasn't just going on against the white community. There's a competition, or there was hate in the black community, right? Of me doing all these things, and the perception is that I'm maybe becoming too white, playing the tuba and the trombone, instead of people looking at it as an outlet or an opportunity.
It was judged.
Selling out or being judged, but I couldn't be bothered by that.
It's such a great way to approach it. And maybe even if you didn't do it consciously, but the way that you fought it was to become a leader.
Yeah, and I didn't fight it with any animosity.
That's what I mean, is that you fought it with it was a different way to fight and to take steps in your own life. But like they say, a rising tide raises all boats. You're bringing up everybody along with you.
I think I'm trying, and not just subconsciously. I think a lot of my efforts were knowingly because I was black, and I knew I needed to make a difference. I knew I needed to bring this culture in our school. I need to help bring this culture in our school together, because there were a lot of good people, a lot of good whites who wanted differently and who may not have been taught certain things at home, and may not, because schools weren't teaching us all the cultural things,
Sure.
right? But we were getting those experiences firsthand in our clubs, in sports, in our debate classes. So it was this generation of kids that, there was change happening here. And so, yeah, I mean, as difficult as it was in some spheres in my outside world, I loved going to school, loved getting off that bus, sometimes having to break up fights. I remember one time it was in the winter, and some white kid took a snowball and threw it at our bus. And you could see some of the black kids really honing in on the look of that kid, because once that bus opened the door, man, they ran off the bus and tracked that kid down and proceeded to kick his butt. And so I had to be the mediator a lot of times, but it was a natural thing. So, yeah, it's when I look back on those kind of things, and I look at myself today, and I understand the things that I've gone through, and my life, and one marriage I had that failed, and now my kids that I've helped bring into this world. All those things are just a part of that same fabric that was growing back then, trying to make a difference.
We're not going to get to all the stories because there's so many. There
are a lot.
And it's so great. And I want to give you some time to talk about what you're doing today, because I think it's super meaningful. But there's at least two more stories I want to try and hit on. And one is, it's iconic. I mean,
which one's that?
Survive in Advance.
Oh,
I mean, that is. I mean, that seems like that's if people didn't know anything else about you and just knew that about that, I mean, that would probably be enough. Just understanding that whole scenario. But the other fascinating story to me is the story about Cindy and how that whole thing evolved. So you tell me where you want to. You tell me where you want to start. I mean,
being as we just finished the March Madness just ended.
Yeah, that's probably
It's probably a good story to tell. And there's so many pieces to that, right? I know I can't get to all of them, but the most important ones are the places I continue to land on the sports side. Because I was very fortunate to have the kind of leaders in sports that I had, even Coach Gray.
Right.
So the quick story there is years later when I ended up making it into the NBA. Because I tell the story a lot, and people always ask me, well, did you go rub it in? Coach Gray, did you go back and find him and rub it in? And
you cut me
twice, Coach. Told me never to come back. I said, no. I hooked up with him. We go back and play the Washington Bullets at the time. And I remember the first time I had lunch with him after that. I invited him to lunch and proceeded to thank him and let him know why I was thanking him. And I think he was a little surprised. He was so excited for me, though. He was very happy that I had stuck with it. And, he never really knew about my dream. But I wanted him to know that he was a part of that journey. And I wanted him to know that how much now I appreciate it. And I told him, Coach, I didn't appreciate it back then. But look, he proceeded to tell me, Thurl, you couldn't play. You were horrible. And he was right. And so I just told him, I said, Coach, you made me decide what I wanted. I had to choose, right? I knew I was going to be a part of the team, but was I passionate enough to continue to want to make myself better in that area or go do something else? And so even if I hadn't made it in basketball, I just think that the perseverance piece was so important for me, because I knew I was going to be something great one day. I knew I was going to make it to the highest level in some field. Maybe it wasn't basketball. Maybe it was in music or some other area. I said, but you made me decide what I wanted. And so here's 6 tickets to the game tonight. Bring your family. Every time I come here, I'll make sure you're taken care of, because you were a big part of that. And so, I've had some great leaders that have taught me things. And leaders come in different shapes, sizes, lenses, which is the biggest thing. And not that one is right or wrong. I mean, I think there's certain fundamental ways that things that leaders should have, attributes that they should have. But the bottom line is you're going to lead in different ways. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if Coach Gray ever won a championship, but that was his way, right? He wanted to make noise with guys who are already equipped with certain abilities. Mm-hmm. I got that. But going through high school with Coach Welch, who went from being my coach from JV to being my head coach the next 2 years in varsity, probably taught me more than any other coach I've ever had on how to be an amazing leader. And again, he was not just my basketball coach, but he was my history teacher. Mm-hmm. When I started to become really good in basketball, he was my agent that college coaches would have to go through to get to me. Mm-hmm. My last period in class was me sitting in his office next to a telephone where the coaches could call in at a certain time of the day and talk to me, talk to him. Okay, they couldn't call my house. They could only go through him. And there were nights when his phone would ring at midnight and his wife would answer the phone and just hand it to him because it was about me, trying to get me to come to their school. So he was a manager. He was all those things. And as I went on and decided where I was going to school, he helped organize that whole thing. I chose North Carolina State. Coaches, he organized all the coaching visits to my house. Mm-hmm. So all the coaches, Dean Smith, all these coaches would come to my house. Norm Sloan from NC State, John Thompson from Georgetown, Lefty Giselle from Maryland. Mm-hmm. And then we'd go through this routine. Sometimes my coach, high school coach, would be there at those meetings. And so I chose NC State, Norm Sloan, for different reasons.
Which is another part of the story. But at this time, you grew up in Maryland, right?
I did.
You didn't choose Maryland.
Nope. Didn't choose Georgetown either. They were right in my backyard.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Well, I just think, it came down to, first of all, academics. All these schools were, school like Georgetown. Mm-hmm. Come on. But my mom's first question to all these coaches was, Coach, if my son comes to your school, you're going to make sure he gets a great education, right? That's his first priority. I know he can play basketball, but you're going to make sure he gets a great education. Mm-hmm. It would always be, yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. And my mom would always follow up, Coach, don't make me come down there. That's important. And so I narrowed it down. Maryland, Georgetown, and NC State were my last. Because, local schools were always great because I could be at home where all my friends and fans and family could come see me.
Yeah.
Almost went to Georgetown because Coach John Thompson pulled out. Oh, man, he pulled out a ringer. Literally, my phone rang. And my mom answered the phone, and she said, son, Thurl Bailey, the great Thurl Bailey is on the phone. Amazing singer. Coach John Thompson knew my love for music. He had Thurl Bailey call my house. And I got the phone, and I knew everything about Thurl Bailey there was to know. And as we started talking, she said, child, you know you need to go to Georgetown. It's going to be the best place for you. Grow up as a man, just do your music. And her and John Thompson were really good friends. It almost sold me.
How do you deny that?
I don't, to this day, I'm like, that was such a hard decision not to go to Georgetown.
Yeah.
Under a legendary coach.
Legend.
And a legend in music. And there was something about this young man wanting to become a man, wanting to leave the confines of his area. Because the goal all along, for me, as I listened to my parents, was about achieving greatness some way, maybe leaving the community and then coming back and then putting back into the community. Mm-hmm. Now, I knew I didn't have to leave the community to do that necessarily, but I felt like I needed to be away, but not too far away where my parents couldn't come and watch me play.
Yeah.
Go to a program that I knew had a great basketball and academic program. Mm-hmm. A legendary coach, Norm Sloan, who had won a national championship in 1974 with a guy named David Thompson, a guy named Tommy Burleson and Monty Towell. They broke the UCLA streak of national championships. And so they beat Marquette in the finals and won the national championship. So I chose NC State under Norm Sloan.
And an interesting side note, I think I have this correct, is at North Carolina, Dean Smith was recruiting
James Worthy.
a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
And
they stopped recruiting me once he signed.
It was James Worthy. Did you ever get to face up with?
Are you kidding me? I see James Worthy every single year now, and we always talk about that.
He was for a long time because he played for the Lake. James Worthy was one of my very favorite.
Yeah, we're really very good friends today. But yeah.
That's a great story. Okay, so you chose North Carolina State, Coach Sloan. But if anybody knows your story, we know that it didn't end up with Coach Sloan.
No, he left. He got a better job at Florida. It's really crazy because he took that job right after my freshman season was over. Mm-hmm. And you know how it is with a college coach, right? You're a surrogate parent to those kids. That's why your parents say, okay. Mm-hmm. And so whenever there's a change, it's hard. Change is hard for a young athlete because one of the reasons why you go there is because the respect and the admiration for that coach, and he's going to teach you just a lifelong full of lessons. And so he leaves, and we're in a panic as young NC State athletes. Didn't know what I was going to do. Some of my teammates were like, look, I'm going with Coach. I'm going to Florida. Some were like, don't know. Maybe I'll stay here. We'll see. I'm going home. That's where I'm going. I'm just going to go home. I called my mom. Mom, Coach Sloan left. Nobody knows what to do. I'm going to come home. Direct quote. Son, you may be going somewhere, but you ain't coming here. She probably put the ASS word in there. You ain't bringing your ass here. And she said, you went there for an education, you're going to get it. You're going to get your degree. You're going to get your education. I don't care where you get it from, but you're going to wait and see who they hire. You might like the guy. Who knows? Mm-hmm. Just be patient. If you don't, we'll talk. So I stayed. And I remember that first meeting when the new hire, Coach Valvano, we didn't know who he was, came from some college called Iona. Mm-hmm. And so our first introduction was in like a lunchroom with him, and arms across, because you know what that means with a bunch of young players with their arms crossed, all the players and their eyes down. Yeah, they're like a defensive position. They don't want to hear it. We don't know you.
He didn't recruit you.
Didn't recruit any of us. Mm-mm. So now we're supposed to like trust you over the guy we decided to come here. Why shouldn't we follow him? So he introduces himself, and he looks very confident. He has this strut about him that just says confidence. And he said, guys, look, I know you don't want to be here. I'm Coach Valvano. You can call me Coach V. I didn't recruit any of you. He said, but I know, I'm quoting him, I know I'm going to win a national championship. And we kind of looked up really quickly, like, did everybody hear what he just said? I know I'm going to win a national championship. Guys, I know it. I know it's going to happen soon. I've dreamt about it. I know what it looks like. I know what it feels like. And I'm hoping that this is the makings of the team that can help us get there. He said, I'm only going to talk to you about 20, 25 minutes. And when I'm done, if you still want to leave, I'll sign your release form. What kind of coach takes that kind of risk based on one speech that he might lose everybody sitting in that room? He did. And he just proceeded to tell us, guys, look, there won't be a day that goes by if you stay here that I won't remind you of the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is for us to win a national championship. Yeah, there's a lot of things we got to do in between, but our ultimate goal is to win a national championship while I'm here. And he said, I know you don't trust me, but I want you to give me a shot. His speech was like, it sold us. I mean, you felt like if you left, you were going to miss something based on his enthusiasm and the way he delivered that speech. Mm-hmm. He hooked us. And one of our first meetings from this crazy man was he brought a ladder to one of our practices. Mm-hmm. He set the ladder underneath the basket. He had a stack of nylon nets, and he had a pair of gold scissors that he kept on his desk. And he said, today, the only thing we're going to do for an hour and a half is we're going to cut down the nets. We're going to cut these nets down and celebrate like we just won the national championship. And we're looking at each other like, is this guy nuts?
Yeah.
He said, yeah, Thurl, you go first, take the scissors, go up the ladder, cut your piece out. We're going to go through the ceremonial process. I'm going to go up last, cut the net down, put it across my neck, and you guys are going to pick me up. You're going to carry me around this 12,000-seat Reynolds Coliseum like we just won the national championship. And that was the most awkward thing that any of us had ever done in our whole lives.
Did anybody quit after that?
I mean, I know some of us felt like we wanted to, but we didn't understand. We didn't, until he made us understand that, guys, I'm not messing around about this national championship. So tell me, if we were to win a national championship this year, what would you do? How would you celebrate? How do you think you would feel? What would it look like to you? What would it sound like? I want you to visualize that. And we're going to do this twice a month. And that's all we're going to do for practice with these gold scissors and these nets. And I'm thinking the fourth or fifth time we got it. We were into it. We were throwing him up in the air. We were running up and down the stairs, yelling in this empty arena. If you go back and look at some of the old pictures of when we won it, you'll see two guys. You'll see Cozell McQueen and Ernie Myers on top of the basket.
Yeah.
On top.
Yeah.
You know how they got up there so quickly?
I'm guessing they practiced.
They practiced it. That's exactly what they practiced every time we did it, was how they could climb up on top of that basket.
So they got into it. Like all of a sudden they thought, well, if I'm going to celebrate, I'm going to get up on it.
It took a few times. It took a few times. I remember falling on my knees and throwing my arms up in the air in a bunch of these practices because I had my routine down by then. But what he was trying to teach us was that we had to be different. We had to visualize what we wanted. We had to be uncomfortable, right? Don't be the norm. And it just became kind of routine to us. And look, we had a lot of work to do. He had to recruit the right way because it didn't happen that first year. Didn't happen the second. But he never strayed from his belief, his opinion about winning a national championship. He basically lived like it. There were some wrinkles along the way because we weren't with him all the time, and he had to trust some of his upperclassmen to make sure that, and his assistant coaches to make sure the bottom didn't fall out, somebody doing something stupid. But eventually, in '83, we found ourselves in the national championship.
Were you going into that season? So that's the '82-'83 season. Are you being considered as a national title hopeful, or were you even on the radar?
We weren't even on the radar. We weren't even on anybody's radar. I mean, we had some talent, but Coach V made sure that he scheduled, because in our own conference we had some powerhouses. University of Virginia, Ralph Sampson. North Carolina had Sam Perkins, James Worthy, Brad Doherty. Oh, what's that other guy they had?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that freaking guy, Michael Jordan, right?
And they won a national championship already?
Yeah, they won.
North Carolina, they won early in Jordan's career.
81, 82. They won it the year before we won.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, it was an incredible season. He scheduled tough teams, Notre Dame, Louisville, teams that he felt like we would learn something from, even if we got defeated. But we ended up beating some of those teams, and we kind of created this momentum. We ended our regular season 16-10, not good enough to get into the tournament. Not at that time.
So you had to...
We had to win the ACC tournament. We beat Wake Forest. Delaney Rudd was a great player for that team. Ralph Sampson, who we hadn't beaten in the regular season. And then we had to go through Jordan. And we beat all three of those teams and got an automatic bid into the NCAA tournament that year. And the rest is history.
The rest is history. What about that run? I mean, what is it that you remember about that run to the championship?
I remember just some momentum that we started to pick up in the ACC tournament after we won it and got the automatic bid. People started to open their eyes about this group of young men, but this flamboyant, not in the sense of like the way he dressed or anything, but just this confidence that he had, that he knew what was going to happen. Like, he was just this authentic, who wasn't really accepted by the other coaches when he came in. Dean Smith didn't like him. Mike Krzyzewski didn't like him. And I'm telling you, Mike became his best friend before he, when he was going through his cancer struggles. But yeah, we started to open some eyes. We started to believe ourselves. We had one of our best players go down mid-season almost. Derek Wittenberg broke his foot against Virginia. So we had a young player named Ernie Myers step in, and he had to take on more responsibility. We had a young player named Lorenzo Charles who stepped in, had to take on more responsibility. So Terry Gannon, who stepped in as a sixth man. So we had some freshmen that just knew that they had to produce for us to at least have some type of successful season. So we finished the season out, and these players matured. Derek Wittenberg came back before the regular season was over. We just took on this momentum in games that we probably should have lost. I think our most difficult game was our first one against a team the Pepperdine. They were really good.
The Waves.
We were down like with less than 2 minutes to go by double digits, and came back and sent that game into overtime, 2 overtimes, I believe, and won that game. And just every single game had some kind of a storyline to it. Wow. And then, of course, the University of Houston Louisville game was the semifinal game. We beat Georgia, and then that dunk fest, because the games were tape delayed, and so we'd go to our hotel room and watch them after we played them. And we watched that Houston Louisville game, and it was just a dunk fest. I mean, 2 of the most powerful teams in college history. So yeah, I mean, we had to figure out in some way how to win those games. And Coach Valvano was a brilliant coach. We were fouling guys on purpose. That's when the hacker, whoever, really came about, because he was taking risks. He was fouling a Dane Suttle, who's a 90% career free throw shooter at Pepperdine, fouling him because he didn't think on that particular stage that
he could make that.
That he could make both.
You've talked about all these tremendous leaders so far in your life, and I am fascinated about your high school coach. I didn't know that. I didn't know that he was so instrumental in your life. And everybody thinks about Coach Valvano, and you just said that he was a genius. What was it about him? What was your relationship with him, and what was it about him that made him a genius? Was he a basketball X's and O's genius, or was he like the belief in yourself genius?
Well, I think, when I say genius, I say a guy who had the ability to have this presence, even though maybe bottom line he wasn't the smartest coach in the conference. He personified someone who made you think that, made you feel that way. He was smart, but he made his mistakes. He was really smart enough to surround himself with people that could help him figure out what was the best, and then he would make the decision. There were times when he prepped for the game, and when the game started, he threw that whole preparation out the window and said, "No, we're going to do this tonight." He was a risk taker. He really was. He was a really good X's and O's guy based on who he had on his team. He knew how to get the best out of each. That was probably what he was the most genius with, his communication skills with his team. He didn't coach me the same way he coached another player. He didn't have to scream at me, but the other guy needed it. That was his motivating trigger. But for me, it was like, just tell me instructions, coach, I'm going to do it. He knew that. He knew how to motivate me. He knew how to treat me in a way that he knew he was going to get the most out of me. He knew how to look at a freshman. There was one particular time in the game, it came down to a free throw from a freshman, Lorenzo Charles, and we all got in a huddle. And Lorenzo wasn't a great free throw shooter. But we all got in a huddle, and just one word. He said, "Guys," a lot of coaches would say, "Well, guys, if he makes it, we're going to do this. If he misses it, we're going to do this." He says, "Guys, look, when Lorenzo makes these 2 free throws," that wasn't for us. That was for Lorenzo. "When Lorenzo makes these 2 free throws, this is what we're going to do." And maybe we didn't get it then, but I kind of got it, right? Because I knew how bad Lorenzo was from the line.
Well, I bet Lorenzo got it. He thought, well, I'm just going to go step up and make 2 free throws.
Or he was like, "Oh, crap."
Well, you tell me. What
Right?
was he? Which one
I know
was he?
which one he was. But he made them.
Have you ever talked to him about that? Have you ever said, "Hey, what were you thinking?"
I think I had some conversation. Lorenzo's passed away. Yeah, he died tragically in a bus accident.
Yes.
But the conversations before that, I mean, the 30 for 30, we didn't have him there for, but we had some. Lorenzo was just a gentle giant, and we had conversations with him about that. But yeah, he was nervous. But a guy like that who is given that kind of confidence publicly with our team in that situation, he wasn't about to let us down.
Yeah.
I mean, Coach V had his way of doing that, right? And so that was a special coach, and he was just brilliant. And I guess I should say he was a genius in the way that he delivered it. You wouldn't have known that he had maybe some weaknesses in his coaching. You wouldn't have known that he didn't necessarily believe in you. He just had this way of making you believe and come along for the ride.
Working with him, did you feel like you were unstoppable? Did you feel like you could accomplish whatever you set your mind to. It's like when you talk about leadership qualities, it feels like he's the guy. And one of your other coaches said this to you, or maybe you said it about your coach, is that he believed in you maybe even more than you believed in yourself and was able to pass that on.
Yeah, I mean, he really was a guy who loved what he did. He absolutely loved it. He loved the game. He played the game. He talked about post-championship, about his father, Rocco Valvano, and the promises that he made, and the promises that his dad made to him about having his bags packed when he knew, his dad knew at some point he was going to get to the national championship, and his dad would tell him his bags are always packed. He's ready. And so he really lived it. And it was beyond basketball, I think, for him. He wanted these kids to be successful, and not just basketball, but in life.
Yeah.
I skipped class once, and he found out about it and brought me to his office and asked me straight up, do you want to be an idiot the rest of your life? I said, no, sir, coach, I don't. He said, well, go to class, show up. And I never missed a class after that.
Yeah. He didn't threaten to call your mom?
He may have insinuated some of that.
That's what I would have done.
How would your mom feel about this?
You missed class.
He brought her up in the conversation. So, yeah, he was that guy that there are a lot of great coaches who've come and gone. There are a lot of bad coaches who've come and gone. And I was so fortunate to be in his life at that time. And to lose him was even more devastating. But his legacy still lives on.
Absolutely. Every year.
Yep. And not just through my family, through my teachings of my kids, through this whole monster that we call cancer. His V Foundation continues to do amazing things.
I'm apologize up front because we're just going to gloss over what has been an
I come
unbelievable.
with a lot.
You
from
do.
it.
There's so much depth of character. Like there's so much, and that's what I'm hoping people will understand and realize, and what a gem and what a treasure it is to have you
or
around.
a mess.
Look, and
No,
a
kidding.
mess. No. Like I have my own personal story. Like you don't. I mean, we've met a few times. You have from the very first time we met. I'm nobody to you, but you treat me like you've always treated me like I'm somebody, and that's meaningful. And I think you do that. I mean, I feel special, but then I see you walk around our office, and I see how you interact with. You treat everybody that way.
Well, you're not a nobody to me, and those people you introduced me to aren't nobodies to me. First of all, that's the first part of it. It's like nobody's a nobody. So, regardless of what I've done, what I've achieved, I know that. I mean, I'm not gonna ever treat someone like I don't care. The most valuable asset we all have is our time. More valuable than money. It really is the most valuable thing we have. So I understand that my time is worth a lot, right? And there's inconvenient times. There's, especially when you're in a world that I'm in, and people want a lot of it. But I just have always promised my parents and myself that I would always take the time. I always make people feel like there's somebody. I don't just go to a restaurant and order my food. I want to know the waiter's name, right? And I want to call them their name when they serve me my food, or when something doesn't go right. I want it to be a personal exchange, a personal moment. And maybe sometimes people think that that's overdoing it, but I just don't.
I'm so glad you said that, because I do the same thing. I try to have a personal relationship, especially in that scenario. And there have been times when I have felt very awkward with the company I'm with about that. And so I lay back on it a little bit. I'm so glad that you have mentioned that now, because now I can just lean right back into what I think is really important.
It is important. And sometimes if you feel like it's not important to you, it's important to them.
Yeah.
Right? You just don't know what people are going through in their lives. And you can't save the world, but you can be you. You can be your authentic self, and can't worry about what people think about you in that sense.
Yeah.
Because maybe you're teaching them something. You never know.
You never know. Well, at this point in your life, so now national championship, you get drafted by the Jazz. You have an amazing professional career here and overseas. You mentioned early kind of a spiritual side of your life. Is that still something in your life at this point in your career as you're kind of going through the national championship, through with the Jazz, with the Timberwolves?
Yeah, that is my, what did you call it? That's my foundation. That really is my rock, and it's something that I try to pull from in everything that I do. Right? I mean, I don't wear it on my sleeve, but I know that what I have and all that I've been through, good and bad, pulls from my religious beliefs and my religious foundation. So I think you called it my granite. And so, yeah, I mean, I in my imperfections, I try to lean on that in everything. My relationship with my wife, my relationship with my kids, my relationship with you or whoever I meet, in my business dealings, in my moments of weakness, in my profession. It's part of that fabric, but I think for me is the most important part.
Well, I want to ask you about, before I let you go, I want you to tell us about, if you're comfortable doing this. If you're not, you just call time out. We can edit.
Okay,
We can edit
we're good.
everything. But just keep me on the right path. But as I look across your life and what you just talked about and your foundation, I feel like you had a tremendous test of that in your relationship with your wife. And not necessarily with your wife, but with her family and how that
And with mine.
transpired, and with yours. So of all of the things you've been through, I find that as fascinating as anything, and the way that you have worked through all of it.
Well, let me make this clear.
Yes.
I think that part wasn't really about religion as much as it was about race and culture. I'm from D.C. She's from Richfield, Utah. If you don't know where that is, just look at Google Maps.
Does it even show up on Google?
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah, it's gotten past the stage where there's only one traffic light. But I think the point is, at some point in this, two people came together and fell in love. And two people from different cultures, different backgrounds. And a lot of people didn't like it. And so on my side of things, as amazing as my parents were as teachers and as amazing as what they taught us about not hating, my parents never taught hate. But there were certain things in the culture, I believe, that as a parent, you want for your kids. I get that. You're protective. You know what you know, and you're comfortable with that based on your upbringing and what you're used to. And what you know wasn't necessarily allowed when you were coming up. But I think your job as a parent that's nurturing and raising kids, is to teach them certain fundamental things about loving unconditionally. Regardless, I don't care what happens, there's an unconditional love that should always be ingrained in the fact that you bore these kids. They're yours. You tried to do your best. You did your best to try to raise them the right way. And at a certain point in their lives, they're going to make their own choices based on those teachings. What you think is right or wrong or not.
Right.
And so I think that story kind of came together in a sense because my wife Cindy's parents grew up in a culture, not necessarily the religious culture yet,
No.
but a racial culture that if any of their kids deviated from that, it was wrong. And so when they met me, it wasn't really even a love affair going on as much as there was a friendship being built. I was playing with the Jazz. We had developed a friendship. We were going to go. I was going to come meet her family, and we were going to go have a bite to eat. And so when I made that journey to Richfield and went to her house, I wasn't allowed to come in the house. They knew I was coming. Wasn't allowed to come in the house because their perception was there's this black guy that wants to date my daughter, and we're just not going to have that in this. I'm not going to have my friends and neighbors coming to me about this Negro, wanting to date my daughter, this black guy wanting to date my white daughter. And so, and these are all the things that, this is the way I'm putting it, right? I'm not taking words from their mouth, but this is all the evidence. And so I never get to go in the house when I go down to visit. I just turned around and went 2.5 hours back to Salt Lake area. But it started something, right? It could have ended something, but what it did was it started a conversation, a curiosity, not just from me, but from a daughter who was wondering why she wasn't brought up that way. You never taught me. You never told me. We never had this, the conversation you had about the birds and the bees. You didn't have the conversation about the black guy. So it started a dialogue between me and Cindy because she didn't understand. And I didn't really, I understood to a certain point because, I thought about, well, what would my mom, dad think about me dating a white girl? They probably wouldn't like it. But I just have a feeling that if they got to know her, they would understand why I love this girl and, at a certain point. But on that side of things, I didn't really care. I was a man. I could make my own choices. I knew she was a good person. I didn't really see, my first inkling was not that she's white, that she's nice. She likes me and we're friends. That's my culture. So really unbeknownst to her parents, when she came back up to school, we were going out to lunch and learning about each other, her learning about my Baptist upbringing, and how good our choir was. And,
Jealousy of the choir.
The preacher preaching.
Yeah.
And then me learning more about her culture, raised in the LDS church and things that she believed and was brought up to believe. And it was just a amazing time for both of us. It's like an exploration of who we were. And it actually brought us closer together. And so, of course, that you're not going to keep that under wraps, especially when the more you go out, the more it turns into, instead of like more like, and then love, and then this infatuation with just wanting to be around each other a lot and respecting each other's persons and beliefs. And so yeah, and it was, the funny part to me is that, like, my other persona was saying, crap, aren't they jazz fans? That was my other persona, my other thinking was that itself should have got me in the door.
That's something, isn't it? That's something.
That's what I thought. And that was the kind of the ego side of me saying that should have been my ticket in.
Yeah.
But no.
Nope.
No. As universal as that may have been, I crossed the line. Right? Now I'm at their door, and I'm asking to bring my kind into that world. So, eventually that actually brought us a lot closer together.
Yeah.
And I was just so impressed with her and her outgoingness and her inability to be afraid. And somebody taught her that.
Right. That's so fascinating about this story.
Somebody taught you that.
Yeah.
Right. So that kind of magnetism just drew me in. And when the word got out, we were dating and seeing more of each other. Then you rally the troops, like on the other side, like, we can't let this happen. So one Monday evening, she gets called home. And I think to her, it's family home evening.
I was going to say.
You knew right where I was going. And when you walk in the door and you're her, you don't recognize the seating arrangement that the family home meeting is, a circle of chairs and one in the middle. That's not a family home meeting. That's an intervention.
Yep.
And so this part always gets a little tough for me because as you go around the room and get opinions from each family member, and you're waiting for your turn to talk, and everybody's telling you reasons why you shouldn't. Everybody's telling you, everybody knows that these black athletes, the only thing they want is one thing. And we don't want you to get hurt, and we're looking out for you. And then the ultimatum comes that it's either us, and granted, not everybody had the opinion that it was bad for her. There was one advocate there, and he was her youngest brother. And everybody has their say, and the ultimatum comes that it's us or him. And if you could picture this in your mind, that Cindy stands up and she walks to the door. Before she leaves, she turns around and she looks at everybody and she says, I choose him. How? And walks out. And doesn't see her family again for over 4 years. doesn't talk to them, tries to, but hang-ups. And I know that there's not a lot of time here, so let me go to the end and say this ends very well. It ends well. But going back, it was some of the most difficult times for both of us. Me, and the fact that, you mean you chose me over your family? I mean, I couldn't even fathom that. I even tried to break up with her at a certain point because I didn't think I was worthy of that. And so she wasn't having it, though. She was fighting.
Good for her. Good for her.
She was fighting for us. And, you know, we decided, I think going overseas to play basketball was probably the best thing that happened to both of us. Because all we had was us. We didn't have influences on either side. We just had us. And if this thing was going to work, we probably needed that. And so, yeah, the journey was well worth it for all of us. She's got the greatest parents in the world. And I knew they were really good people. I get it to a certain extent.
You said it earlier. There's this funny, Cindy is the way she is. She learned those lessons somewhere.
Yeah.
That's probably from her family.
Yeah.
But then there's this other manifestation of it.
I mean, I get it.
There's a little.
I get the parental protection.
Sure.
I have it with my kids to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Right? So I think there were a lot of lessons learned for me, probably, and her. Probably forgiveness would be at the top of that list. For them,
Forgiveness on your side? Forgiveness from you?
forgiveness for them not understanding what I hope they learn about loving unconditionally. Forgiveness for them not treating her like a daughter for that many years. Forgiveness for them for missing out on an amazing development. Forgiveness for them for not getting past the darkness of my skin. And I think asking for forgiveness, because it wasn't, there were sometimes it was like, I won't use the word on this podcast, but they can go do their thing. So we learned a lot. And I think on their side, they got it. They understood. I think that it was always in them, right? Or she wouldn't be the way she is. But just not putting labels on people and races and things. And I know they grew up that way. Her parents grew up in a house full of very prejudiced parents. So, yeah, a lot of great lessons learned there. And, we have to teach our kids as we've had our kids and as they've gotten older, like my parents did for us. Look, this is what happened. We love them, but you need to know this. And for, I think, the bravery for her parents to be able to come and apologize and to write countless letters about what they've learned and what they felt and why they want us to forgive them, because now there's a lot of clarity with them. And so, yeah, I mean, we're not, this isn't a new thing. There's a lot of families and people have gone through it. I feel like that because of my high profile situation with the Jazz, that a lot of people have gone through worse.
I'll bet.
I just had a pass in a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was never raised to be prejudiced or think that someone was less than someone else. Although in my parents' upbringing, that was a thing.
Yeah.
Just like you're talking about. And I didn't realize it until I was in high school and Carlos and Kate and Carter came home with me one day, and that changed everything in a good way.
Yeah.
Because they were just, you couldn't help but love those guys.
Yeah, and it's an important part of our journeys, right? I mean, it really is. I mean, things have changed in a way, but in some ways they haven't changed at all culturally with us.
It's true.
And so as long as we can continue to be advocates, and, I know that my in-laws are advocates now. My parents are passed away, but...
Did your parents have a chance to know Cindy? And
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I just am thinking to myself, and this is not a judgment on Cindy's parents, not at all, but I'm just thinking that once they understood the depth of character here, that was
My parents or hers?
Hers with you. And I mean, I just can't imagine what that meant, what that did.
Yeah, I think it was, a lot of that is selfishness, right? A lot of that is, well, my neighbor's going to be talking, and
I was just thinking that when you said that earlier. I wonder
girlfriends.
how much the perception of others
Yeah.
drove some of those.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I mean,
Sure.
it's part of, well, this is how I feel. Like, I don't have to go sit down with my girlfriends and explain why a black dude's dating my daughter. So a lot of it's gossip. A lot of it's, we're experiencing a higher level of that now with social media, I think.
Oh,
Right?
that
And there's some good with that, but
for sure. But
there's so much
it's
danger in that. It's just lightning speed now. But yeah, I think the bottom line is, after being married to Cindy for over 30 years and producing and bringing our kids into this world, is that now we get a chance to be in the position. Right now we get a chance to use it. And ultimately we let our kids make their choices, right? Whether it's who you marry or, it doesn't really matter, right? I mean, I can't think of a scenario, even a worse scenario, that I would stop loving my children. I would stop caring for them. I would stop speaking to them. Just can't. And that's just me. I just...
And that's just you, but that is also you've had the benefit, if I can call it that, of experiencing that from Cindy's perspective. And that's an unbelievable lesson.
Yeah, it is. And, we all... And as I look at that experience and as I go back to visit them and see how amazing they are, and they're getting older too, their health is failing. It's just a waste of time. It's just it's draining to not be forgiving. It's draining to hold a grudge. It's just
It's all of those
waste.
things.
Yeah.
And you're taking your most valuable asset, as you said earlier, time, and just throwing it away.
Yeah. Yeah, you are. And so, look, I adore my wife. And marriage itself isn't easy. To be married to me for 30 years, come on.
I cannot imagine.
Yeah. And so for her to commit, for her to walk out that door and say, I choose him over 30 years ago. And I look at our life now and the journey we've been on, ups and downs, goods and bads. Gosh, I couldn't imagine why I tried to break up with this girl. And women have just a different kind of sense than we have. There's something about them, even when you don't think they're right. They just have this different perspective. And
Yeah.
she's definitely one of a kind. I don't know, as far as I look at our lives together and those choices that we made and those things that we've gone through, the difficult times, I'm a better man because of it.
Yeah.
In everything that I do. And so that's part of that granite foundation from the spiritual side to that side where you look for this companion that just you could spend the rest of your life with. That's my Cindy.
And who makes you a better man, which is crazy. Like you came into this thing like a really, really good man. And you're saying you became even a better man. I would like to wrap this up. I love that story. But I think the one of the great benefits of all of your experiences and the people you've been around and the leaders you've associated with, you've been so thoughtful about it and introspective. And now you have an opportunity and you take the opportunity to teach these lessons to people. And I'm just telling you, I feel like a better person for sitting here with you for the last... How long have we been here, Solomon? Hour and a half? 2 hours? Something like that. Anyway, I feel like a better person. And I would just, you're making yourself available. And people, I just want to encourage people to take advantage of that because you'll be a better person spending time with Thurl Bailey. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about, I've already kept you way too long, but just tell me about your life, how you've taken all of those experiences and what you're teaching people with the leadership training and the speaking that you're doing.
Well, I think one of the things we all have to ask ourselves as we build that platform we're talking about, we all have it, right? Through our experiences. You get to a point in your life and you say, well, what am I going to do with all this, right? I know I have something here of value, not just to me, but to other people. What am I going to do with it? I'm just going to die with it, right? I know I'm I'm sprinkling a lot of it to my posterity. But yeah, I think the biggest question for me was, what do I do with all these things that I've learned as I'm continually learning from other people, as I'm building this platform, as I get people who want to tap into whatever this is, from whatever perspective, whether it's from a youth perspective to say, oh man, I grew up like you, Thurl, I'm in this situation. Or I have kids who don't have a lot. We don't have a lot as a family, but my son loves this and that. What do I do? What do I tell him? Or from the CEO from a company that says, look, I have a team here I'm trying to build. And there's a universal message there in teamwork. And sports is really kind of a microcosm of that. What can you teach my people? What can you teach me about leadership? What can you teach me about trying to get my team on board with my vision? What can you teach me about having them pitch in their ideas to help me build this thing to get to the ultimate goal? So there's people that come in from all walks of business and life that want to know where you've been and how you got through it, where you're going. It's funny because I had another one of those moments in my career that was kind of this epiphany. And in my Italian basketball journey, I played in Como, Italy, northern Italy, about a half hour from Milan on one side, and I was a half hour from Lugano, Switzerland on the other side. Took that drive to Switzerland quite a bit, and you get to the border, and the AK-47 patrol person would come over and ask you 3 questions. Same questions all the time. That was their protocol, and I knew it because I had done it a lot. And the first one was always ask me where I was coming from. I wanted to know where I'd just come from to get there, and I would tell them. Then they want to know what my purpose was for going where I'm going today. And then they want to know what my exact destination was. And then you show them your passport and visa, and they let you go. And I did that a lot. But there's one particular time I went across there, and I don't know what was going on in my life. There was a lot. I was kind of at a crossroads with everything going on with family, and I was into my prime in basketball. I'd start thinking about other things. So I remember driving across the border and not getting very far where those 3 questions just struck me in another way. I pulled my car over, literally pulled it over in the parking lot, and I kind of went over these 3 questions. And about the time I went through each one, I kind of framed it in my thought processes for my life. She asked me where I was coming from. That's my past. My mom used to say that all the time to me. When I acted up as a grown-up, as a successful grown-up, my mom would put her fist under my chin and say, boy, don't you ever forget where you came from. So my past, I always value that as important. All those things I talked to you about that my parents gave up, all those things that I talked to you about, my neighborhood and coaches cutting me, that's all a part of me. I can't forget that. Well, my purpose, holy crap. What am I supposed to be doing with all this stuff? Basketball doesn't define me. It's a vehicle to get me places, to help me pay for stuff. It's a great ideal world to be in, but there's a real world out there.
Yeah, it's just a part of your story.
That's right. And so what do I do with all this value ultimately? What am I using it for? What's my purpose? And talk about that a lot, because I think whatever purpose it is, it ought to have something to do with service. I don't think I've ever felt, I won a national championship. The only thing that's felt better than that is when I do something for somebody else. Really. And maybe they don't even know I did it. And where am I going? Where do I see myself 5, 10 years from now? Those are 3 big questions, right? It's about past, purpose, and potential to me. How good do I want to be? Who am I going to be serving as I go forward? Financially, religiously, whatever. All those 3 questions are just a powerful way for me to take inventory. And so that's what I talk about. I got a foundation full of a lot of stuff, Frank. And depending on who you are and what you need, what you want your people to come to leave with, I've got a journey for you.
You sure do.
And so that was really what I decided to do, was to take that platform and share it, beyond what I do as a broadcaster. I make my living going out and speaking, and not always for money, but if there's an opportunity to take it into a youth arena, business arena, even sometimes a religious arena, that's what my purpose is.
Yeah.
And so I don't want it to go to waste. I want it to be able to help people and serve people, and I get to learn a lot along the way too about other people, and meet great people from
Absolutely.
that I've never thought I would maybe venture to meet before. Not just high profile people, but just ordinary, extraordinary people.
Yeah. When you were describing that checkpoint question, the 3 questions before you even started talking about it, I was thinking to myself, man, that's a great way to think about my life.
Yeah.
You've done that. I think that's unbelievable, amazing. We would love to have you come back and visit with us and tell that story.
I'm still a work in progress, so.
Well,
But progress is happening.
There's, I don't know how much more progress. If you do make any more progress, you might just be taken away from us.
Not the Liam Neeson type taken. You're talking about the other type.
No, the other type.
Okay.
The other type. As I reflect on this little bit of time I've had to spend with you, your family and your mom and dad, and they set this foundation for you to build on, and you did. And you had someone early in your life who saw potential, and that was meaningful. And you had someone in your life who said, I'm going to serve you. I'm going to spend extra time with you. If you'll commit to me, I'll commit to you. And that was meaningful. You've had someone in your life who's maybe made you believe you were more than you thought you could be. And you had someone in your life who chose you.
Yeah. Look, that word potential is maybe one of my most favorite words in my vocabulary, because as I look at my life, I know that coach who kept me in the 7th grade, first of all, I know my parents knew I had all the potential in the world along with my other siblings. And then that coach to see potential in me. And then to have other coaches that say, look, I know what you're about. I know what you can do. This is how I'm going to use you to help us collectively get to where we want to go. And then to have a woman in my life see past my color, straight into my soul and my heart, and see potential in me as to what she knew I could be as a husband and a father. And then to understand that Christ sees that in all of us. Man, I thought we were at the end here. I was done with this, but there's tears. But I just, that's the way I've always wanted to live my life, is like I believe Christ did. I could never get that perfection, but I'm going to try. In all my mistakes and all my mishaps, I'm going to try my best to be like I knew he would be in this situation. And I'm not saying that Christ didn't get angry. I know he did. But that is just me. Take me or leave me. You're going to get a 7-footer who still cries, who still sometimes doesn't make the right decision, or may have missed something in my journey, may take advantage of. But I'm still not going to deviate from that granite, from that foundation that I know that I am. And so if that can teach people something, then, that's a great thing. And, we're all here for a very short time, man. And so how do you want to be remembered? And for me, it's that simple. It really is. Come on, man. You exhausted me here, dude.
You're going to have to take a nap. Look, you're a legend. You're an icon. We're all better. I feel like a better person for having spent time with you. I know anybody else who has the opportunity would feel the same way. I hope people take advantage of it.
Well,
I hope people take advantage of this.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for your persistence, because this finally worked. This finally happened.
Well, it's worth, it could not have been more worth it. The depth.
Thank you, brother.
The depth of character and all that you are. Where can people find you?
Well, you can find me. I mean, as far as on the internet and stuff, they can follow me at Big T Bailey, my social media platforms. They can just Google Thurl Bailey, and they'll get all kinds of information of where I am, where I'm speaking, what I speak about. I've got a book that I wrote on that championship team. It's a bunch of stories, the journeys of all those guys that were part of that team before we even met. And so it's a pretty powerful book, things I didn't even know till I interviewed them all. But I'm out there, man. They can find me anywhere. Yeah, just look me up.
All right. And jazz season's coming to an end.
It is. I'm excited for the summer. Sure, there's going to be a lot being done. Young players are still developing. Justin Zanuck, Danny Ainge are, trying to figure out the other pieces that they need. Great draft class coming out. So it's going to be exciting. Summer League coming up. We're going to have that at the U this year because they're going to be making some changes in the arena. So I'm excited.
Good. Well, that's the thing about you. You're always excited. I hope you'll come back and visit us. I'm gonna keep harassing you.
I will. I'll be back. You don't have to harass me. I'm good.
We should probably have Cindy come on the podcast.
Oh boy. Yeah. You may want to think twice about that. She says it like it is. Her way.
Yeah.
She's a cowgirl growing up on a cattle ranch and knows the meaning of work. And our kids know the meaning of it too because of her. But yeah, she might do it. Yeah, she might do it. Your editor's going to have some work to do.
That's all right. We can do that. Big T, thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
You got it. Thank you for listening to the Know Your Ship podcast presented by eHub. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review.